Build cities, monuments, and other structures. Open new trade routes. Expand and fight off outsiders. And plan your actions with your clan council in Minos, Dawn of the Bronze Age. Thank you for joining us at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp.
And I'm Kevin Delp. Minos Dawn of the Bronze Age is a dice drafting and placement game for 1 to 4 players. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to play. It's designed by Stan Kordonsky and published by Board and Dice.
So they sent us this copy to review, and in this video we'll give a super quick overview of the game, and then we'll spend most of our time sharing our thoughts. In Minos, you play as the leaders of different Minoan clans, vying to be crowned the ultimate leader of your people. The game is played over 4 rounds, with scoring at the end of rounds 2 and 4. During a round, you'll draft 4 dice and place them on the action sections. Then you'll advance on the progress tracks based on the color and value of the dice you selected.
After that, you actually perform your actions in turn order, 1 die at a time, but you have to go in order from your highest die to your lowest. The main actions are gaining cards, playing cards, building structures, placing and moving your warriors, and then wild action that lets you perform one of the other actions.
After everyone has performed their actions, you gain income. There are several places on the main board and your player board where you can advance to get more stuff.
Then you have cleanup and move to the next round. If it's the end of round 2, you score dominance and presence in each region, and score for your farms as well.
At the end of round 4, you score those things again, and then endgame scoring for structures you've built and for cards you've tucked under your board.
The player with the most points, you won't believe it,
Wins?
wins.
So, okay, that was really quick and doesn't talk about everything, but we'll go into more detail as we talk about our opinions.
And we're going to separate this video into 5 different sections. For the 5 C's. Our thoughts about the components, our comparisons, our critiques, our commendations, and finally, our conclusions.
So there are some nice wooden components for your structures, the palaces, towers, ships, farms. They're screen printed.
Yeah, I really like those. The one thing I will say I'm not a big fan of are the meeples, the little characters. They're called warriors in the rulebook, but they look puny.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because the kind of storyline is that the Minoans were not this warrior race. They were more peaceful and solve things through diplomacy and government, but they did have to fight against the sea people.
Right, and they have weaponry in the game, so they're fighting someone. Maybe you're not fighting
each other,
but you're fighting the sea people, and I don't know, I wish they had...
Yeah, they are pretty rounded and look very innocent and not very imposing.
But, I mean, they serve a purpose, yeah.
So there's also a double-sided board for the game. So if you're playing 2 or 3 players, you're going to use one side of the board. 2 players, you have an overlay and some action overlay boards to switch it up. And then there's the other side for the 4 player. So it changes the layout of the board for player count.
There's also dual layered player boards, which are nice, and everything fits in them very well.
Yeah, no problems with taking things in and out or moving up that income track. Most of the other components for the game, though, are just cardboard, kind of standard, nothing that stands out. So they're not awesome, but they're not terrible. They're just kind of standard.
Yeah, and then the other wooden component in the game are the holders for the dice. They serve a good purpose. I mean, they're easily seen. The colors work well, so I think they work well with the game.
And I think that's a good segue to the next section of comparisons. Because what do those holders make you think of automatically?
Right away, I thought, we played a game called Queenbra, and you are placing dice in, your colored holders, and those holders are then used to draft cards. Now that's different in this game, but that holding dice, I was trying to think of any other game that had that mechanic, And
the little cups.
The little cups for the dice. And when you search for dice holders on Google, you're getting like
not what
you want. Dice. You're getting like D&D stuff. And anyway, if you can think of another game that uses that mechanic, I would love for you to tell us in the comments. But yeah, so Coimbra has that. I think this used well. You can see your color and it works well.
Yeah, similar to Coimbra and the Artemis project. When you place your dice out into the action rows, you're going to do it from lowest die to highest die. So sometimes you're sliding people's dice around to different spots to get it into the right order. So I thought that was similar with both Coimbra and Artemis project, that mechanic of the game.
Now, Stan has designed a couple different games. What are your thoughts on that, for him as a designer?
So, not all of them, but a lot of his games do fall into kind of the medium to medium heavy weight, and they also often combine mechanisms.
Yes.
Let's see, he did
Rorik?
dice drafting with Dice Hospital.
Oh, Dice Hospital, yeah.
Rorik has it has cards, it has placement, Endless Winter. I haven't actually played that one, but I know it combines a lot of components. Yes. There's a lot of things going on with that. And currently, on BGG, the weight scale of this game is his highest one.
Okay.
So far. It's currently at a 3.8. I know that's subjective, and some people will think it's heavier or lighter, but just based on that, currently it's a little higher than most of his other games.
Okay. Well, let's talk about comparisons to other games, with specifically board and dice games. We have, I think, the most similar in weight is probably Teotihuacan, because not only do you have dice that, there's a lot of things going on in Teotihuacan, there's a lot of things going on in Minos. So I think the weight scale is there. I think it's a little bit less complex than like Tekenu or like...
something like Nucleum, like definitely below Trismegistus and some of the other T games.
But more complex than one of their more recent games, Windmill Valley. It's more complex than that, and it's probably maybe a little bit more complex than Teletum.
Okay.
But maybe I'm like gonna put like Teletum like really close, really close, and more complex than like Barcelona. We have that right back there.
Yeah, I would say complexity. You have Windmill Valley, then probably Barcelona. Then your Teletum and Minos kind of here. Then you're jumping up a little bit more with like...
a lot of the other T games. So, all right. Well, that's good comparisons. Let's move to our critiques.
Ooh, critiques.
Now, we've talked about the dice being placed in these holders. And I really like that in the way that you're putting them out and you're not taking the turn right away. You're able to do those turns right away. But I think the flow of the game is interrupted specifically with going up these, what they call the advancement tracks. What you're doing in the game is you're drafting the dice, you're placing them out, and all of a sudden the game says, all right, the next phase is you are going to total up your dice and you're going to divide them into like values of 9, but they have to be the same color, and then you can move up tracks if they're 9 or higher. And it's not like you're actually grabbing those dice and being like, okay, these are my 4 dice and putting them together. You're actually like, okay, there's like 16, if you're playing 4 players, like 16 dice up there.
Yeah, there's like, and then there's the colors as well, and then the color holders. So you're looking for your color holders, and then the colors of the dice.
And sometimes it was just confused. It's not like, oh, I can't do it. It's just like, I think it just breaks the flow.
Because you have been in that, what actions do I want to do? What order do I want to do them in? And now you're doing, I need to
math. A little bit of like, okay, connecting those. Okay, now I'm going up those, which a lot of the times, especially at the middle track,
you're getting automatic benefits when you go up.
Then you're doing actions, which you haven't even taken your first turn yet. So my one critique is, I wish there was a better way of doing that. I like that you're going up the tracks. Don't get me wrong. I like going up tracks. I just don't like that it breaks the game flow up.
So it's transitioning from the action mindset to then doing the math. There's also the gray wild dice, so you're thinking, do I want to combine this wild die with my red die to go up the red track, or do I want to combine it with the blue die to go up the blue track? And each track has its own kind of theme or area of the game that it is helping you progress with.
Okay.
All right, so in I guess, the same realm as the dice and doing your actions, there is an interesting rule in this game where when you get to the performing the actions phase, you have to take your highest die, so highest to lowest. So it's not, I get to choose any die I want and take the action there. There is an order that you have to take them in based on how you drafted your dice. Now, the first time we played, Kevin and I were playing 2-player, and there are little action boards that you put on top of each action. And I was a little, I wouldn't say confused, but at least it gave me a moment of pause.
Yeah, you were just making sure you're reading the rules correctly.
Right, because the player aid says something about taking the highest die from the action board. And I'm playing 2-player, and there's actually boards that are on top
of the board.
So it was, do I take the highest die in an action or the highest die I have total? And looking back at the rules, I believe it is the highest die total. But I just think it's one of those things that is unique to this game that players could miss.
Yeah, I would say I think there's going to be people that play this game and they're going to sort of gloss over that rule or misinterpret the rule, and then the game's going to just be a different game because
it's a programming game, basically, because during that drafting phase, you are basically programming the order that you'll take the actions in. Now, if you have equal dice, then you get to choose.
Then there's a little bit of...
But yeah, there is that, I really want to draw cards before I play
the cards. Before I build my stuff.
So I need to have a higher die in draw cards, but the higher the dice, the worse the action is.
Well, not worse, but... yes, usually worse action. You're getting a little bit of benefit. I agree. Worse action, but there are...
Not as strong.
Not as strong. There we go. Not as strong as an action. Yes.
So anyway, it just could be a thing. Players who have experience with a lot of games, sometimes we assume we know how a game is played. No. And this is one of those different types of rules that's in there that you just have to watch out for.
Yeah, let's move on to, since we're talking about dice and just all the cards, there's a lot of randomness in the game too, right?
Right, because the dice rolls are going to be different from round to round. The cards that you draw are going to be different. You had a
great game one time when we rolled all 6s, and that really worked well with your player power, with your card powers.
I had tucked, there's a mechanic in the game where you can tuck cards under your board, and it gives you an ongoing benefit for taking certain types of dice or actions. I had 3 cards tucked under the 5 or 6 value die. Last round of the game, it was almost all 5s and 6s, so I was able to take 3 of those dice and then able to really activate all 3 of those cards. So that felt great to me, but there's no guarantee that that will happen, because it could have been that no 5s and 6s.
And then you might have felt differently about that game because you're like, I never got to activate my stuff. So there's a little critique on that.
So a bit of a gamble. Beware of the randomness.
Yeah. The length of the game, to me, is a little bit of a critique for what the game is. So we were playing 4 players, 3 hours. I know it says up to 2.5 hours.
We were playing 2 people. It was their first game. So you might be able to get it down to 2.5.
Maybe. But I actually think that game length's going to be about the same, because it's not going to be like, I'm new to this. It's I
understand.
Now I understand. So now I'm going to take even more time to make sure I place my dice in the right spots, in the right areas for my specific actions. So I don't really know because of that. Just you're trying to be as strategic as possible. A lot of the strategic thinking is happening when you're placing the dice out. Not necessarily, there is some, but not necessarily when you're drafting, because it is like Melissa said.
Not when you're taking the action.
Yeah, when you're taking the action, it's like, I have to take my highest value. Now, once in a while, if you have the same, you choose. But usually it's like, I'm taking this, and then you're doing a bunch of stuff. Now, that could be more strategic, because you're like, what am I actually going to be building, and all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of the thought going on is happening at the drafting
when
of the dice.
When you're drafting and placing your dice. Yeah.
All right. But, when we say all that, why is this, different than all the others? Why should I play this game and not other games?
Okay, so moving on to our likes, our commendations, to keep into the C alliteration.
Yeah.
So I know asymmetry
Yes.
and player powers.
Yes.
Something.
I enjoy that in games because I feel like I like being on different footings.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just brings a little just bit of like fun to the game. It's like, oh, everyone's doing the same thing. Like oh, look at this cool thing that I get to do. So at the beginning of the game, not only do you have sort of like starting like resources and benefits and something like that, but you also have like a player power. I don't want to say player power, but I guess that's sort of what it is. Like a little tiny track that you can go up that no one else is really going up, and it could be affecting your cost of your cards. It could be affecting some conversion rates. It could be affecting.
Could be giving you points.
Yeah,
for
or
things.
even like I had one that we talked about like joining dice together for values. I was going to go check that I could get better benefits on that going up more tracks if I could get dice that valued together like 6 or less instead of 9 or less.
Oh, yeah. So Kevin was able to go up 3 tracks, one of them, because if he could get value 6 dice, that would be an automatic move because he had that power.
Yeah, it was just a fun little thing. And my thought process behind that was, oh, because I have that power, I could go take lower value dice and still get going up the tracks, but also get a better benefit, better power of the actions. That's what some of my thoughts.
A better slot.
Yeah,
on
so
the
there's a lot of things going on with that, asymmetry.
All right. Yeah, I like cards. I like games where you can combo things and you can kind of build an engine, and there's some interesting strategies with which cards you play, because during the game you can play cards for their immediate benefit, and then hopefully you can tuck them under your board for a different ongoing benefit. And sometimes you're looking at them going, oh, this immediate benefit's awesome. I don't really care about the bottom one. Or, oh, this bottom
I need to get this under real
tuck
quick.
is really powerful. The immediate benefit is okay. So you're making decisions about which ones to tuck, and then, like we were talking about earlier, you can get some great synergies going on with those cards.
And there's 2 levels of cards, which I like in the game. So when you finish your scoring round after round 2, then you're taking the blue deck and putting the red deck in. Now, there are ways to get red cards, even in rounds 1 and 2. But for gameplay-wise, you're getting the cards, the lower cards away and getting these more, to me, better cards.
The level 2 cards are more expensive, but they often have maybe not better benefits, but more complex benefits and things that might help you later in the game as you've built up different engines and synergies.
One of the things I like about Minos is the flexibility. It's a lot of games you're like, oh, I need money to buy cards. I need money for this. Well, you do need to get sort of like your income going, which there's a track to get your income up, but not necessarily, because there's other ways. The flexibility in this game is great because you can use your weaponry in order to like get a temporary resource, and the resources in the game actually help you get a discount on your cards. They help you get a discount on your buildings, and some of those buildings is like a multiplication discount. So you can sometimes build a building for free because you have a certain type of resources, whether they're temporary resources you gotta spend, but the permanent resources, like, they're yours for the game, and they also help you go up the income track.
Right. Yeah, I had one game where I had a lot of those permanent resources and was really high in the income track. The most recent game, I hardly had any.
I know, I think you had a very low income.
And I was very low on the income.
I think you won.
I still won the game, but I had to find other ways to offset costs.
I like that. That's what I'm saying. I like that flexibility.
You don't get necessarily stuck if you can't go down one path. You can kind of pivot or do other things. Okay.
There's a lot of variability in this game as well.
Yeah, the action spaces, I think, are interesting, especially in the 4-player side. I would say that I personally don't recommend this at 2 players.
No, I wouldn't.
Because you have that area majority thing that isn't as exciting, and the action spaces on 2 players aren't as interesting.
Yeah. I agree. Like, we were playing 2-player, and then we looked at the 4-player. We're like, whoa, look at all these things that you could possibly do, whether it's a better power, or even if it's a lesser power, you're getting cool, like, extra benefits, like almost like a catch-up mechanic, like going up tracks or getting an extra building, or
so it might be, in the first space I get to play 3 cards, second space 2 cards, third space I only get to play 1 card, but I get to go up a progress track. Third space, oh, only one card, but I get the special bonus that we randomly set out at the beginning of the game. So sometimes strategically you don't actually want that high spot, because I might be like, oh, I only have one thing that I can build, but I do want to go up a progress track. So trying that, where do I think I'm going to land on that track? And sometimes you're like, oh, I really want the really good power, but people still push you down.
Well, and it's kind of funny. I think the first round of the game, the first time we played 4 players, I did not think that I was going to get shut out of a whole, category, action. And it was something about, I think I might have been, grabbing cards. And it was like, oh, I'll just do that later, and I'll put a lower value as well. I think Will, put 2 of his dice up there. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. I mean, I can go do the wild action. So I wasn't, shut out, but it was I didn't even, it didn't, even occur to me that someone was going to go to that place twice. Because there's so many other amazing things to do.
Yeah.
Which talks about, the dice, but the cards. That is the point. You talked about liking cards. The engine building in this game is where this game is at. To me, this game that's where, the meat of the game is, engine building.
Yeah, because you can... either with the automatic benefits when you play a card, sometimes that's giving you actions, sometimes it's giving you the resources you need. And then if you can tuck those cards, like I said earlier, especially if they stack on the same action or the same die. I mentioned when I took a 5 or when I used a 5, I triggered 3 different cards. Well, I also had cards for the build action. So I'm triggering those 3 cards for the 5s, and then I'm triggering 2 other cards for the build. So I'm triggering 5 things from taking that 1 die, the 5 on the build. So yeah, that feels really good.
And your tuck cards are points.
Yes. All cards that you tuck are going to be...
I know. So it's not only are you getting amazing things, you're also getting a lot of points. I mean, a lot... You had 13 tucked cards.
I had a ton. Now, I went up the red track, and the red progress track is the one that lets you tuck cards at the income phase. Yeah. And then there are other ways through some of the card powers to potentially tuck some, but I really went hard on the tucking.
All right.
Which was really fun for me. That was a fun aspect.
We talked about some of our critiques, some of our commendations. I think it's time to conclude, what are our concluding thoughts on Minos Dawn of the Bronze Age?
Well, I feel like our commendation section was a lot longer and had more things than our critique section. But Kevin, what is your thought of this game? Because we've had discussions about this.
I enjoy playing Minos. I enjoy it, but is it I'm always looking at what is the best games that I've been playing? What are my top games of the year? What makes this game amazing? That's gonna make it stand out and make it last last a long time. So it's it comes back to the not only the table, but it's in broader the board game world. This is gonna be a game on the shelves at a board game store for years to come. I'm just does this game have it? And Board and Dice puts out some amazing games. They just came out with an amazing game called Windmill Valley, which we've raved up and down about. And I'm you need to go buy this. I don't know if I'm going to be go buy this. And I think there's a couple reasons. That we talked about these card actions, it's a really card building game. Windmill Valley has this in a very not maybe as much, but it's got this okay, I'm putting cards above my player board, and when I take certain actions, I'm activating them. Now, can I build 13 cards under my player board? No, but I feel I get that same experience where I'm, oh man, I just took this specific action. I'm talking about Windmill Valley, and I get to do this, this, and this as well. Well, in Minos, you're getting the same thing. Maybe it's even more powerful and it's more amazing. Maybe that's why people will gravitate to this instead of that. But I personally gravitate to this because I can play Windmill Valley in a lot shorter amount of time.
An hour and a half.
Well, like Melissa said, I don't know if I would want to play this at 1 or 2 players ever. I want to play this at 3 or 4 because of the area control, because of the cards played, because of the dice drafting, because of all the things that are going on. I like that interaction in the game, but I don't know if I want to spend 3 hours. So for what the game is it going to be better than Windmill Valley or worse? I would choose Windmill Valley over Minos, but I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying it's not to the level of another game that I really, really enjoy.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I would say this is tough because where we are in our game groups at this point in time, it is easier for us to play those midweight, like 2-hour max games.
Okay.
So this one, like you were saying, is the next step up.
It is.
It is more complex. It is longer.
Yep.
It has a lot of great aspects to it, but how often will we get people to play with us?
Yeah, and there's a lot going on in the game. Not that it's confusing. I'm just saying a lot going on. And for instance, how many tracks are in this game?
Well, there's the 3 progress tracks.
Correct.
We didn't really talk about it, but you have ships that you put onto
there's a
tracks.
ship track.
And you can
3 different ship tracks.
3 ship tracks that you can then go up.
And there's an A and B side, so every game's just a little bit different. So there's a lot of things going on in this game. What other track is there?
There's your income track.
And you're like, I gotta go up the income track. So there's like all these tracks, and that's just one part of the game. And I actually don't think the tracks are the main part of the game. We talked about the cards being the main part of the game, because I think really, in order to do well in this game, you have to be able to get your cards in the right way and synergize your cards well.
Yeah, and then also, having presence on the board. Because you get points for having the most people in an area, but you also get points for having at least one person in the area. And you can go up a track, the blue track, to actually increase your points for that dominance, for having the most. So, lots of different things that you can focus on.
But with the people, with the area control, everyone's putting their people out. It's not like...
I like that it's not all or nothing.
Right.
You still get something for having people there.
Yeah, presence out there. And most people are putting a lot of their people out on the board, so maybe you are going to be the first one to be able to build your palace because, you got to that region first, but you're going to put like 6 to, 8 people out on the board, and you're going to be spreading out. So everyone's doing that. It's not like, oh my goodness, Kevin's got like 3,000 people on the board. There's no way I can beat him.
Right.
Sort of thing. So everyone's got the area control thing going on. I think it's just a part of the game, not the main part of the game. That's how I look at it.
Okay. So, I guess circling
back to our conclusion.
To conclusions, I think I definitely will have Windmill Valley in my top 10 games of the year. This one, it's a maybe. Yeah. It kind of depends on what else comes out.
Yeah.
I think it would be bottom half because it is, for me, for us, it's it's that step up in the complexity and time commitment, and then just teaching it to people as well. I do appreciate that there are player aids.
Yes.
So it has some of that information as you're teaching it. People can look at them. It has the reminders. So thumbs up for having player aids in the game.
This is a really, really good game. But how many really, really good games are out there? There's
a lot.
There's a lot of really, really good games. I'm always looking for the great game. What game do I want to introduce to people? And if it's going to be someone who likes this type of game, sure, I'll play Minos with them. But for the most part, I'm going to choose Windmill Valley.
So, for me, I think this would be a game that if someone suggested we played it, I would be like, sure, great, awesome, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how often I would be taking it off the shelf and suggesting it to other people.
I'm with you.
Is that kind of...
Yeah, I think that's where I am.
Good game. Well. If you like the things that we talked about in our commendations, then yes, go for it.
And there's a lot, we mentioned, there's a lot going on in the game. The tracks, the cards, the dice.
The combos.
Combos.
Yay, combos.
So if you're okay with a little bit, I'd say... We haven't really nailed it down, but I guess we were comparing to other games. A medium plus game. It's not a heavy game. It's not like a medium weight game. It's a medium plus game. Then, with all the extra things that are going on here, it's very easy to understand this game. It's not very difficult to understand what's going on.
There's only 4 main actions, but they can trigger into other things.
It's an amazing thing in the game. So, yes.
All right. So, let us know what are your favorite board and dice games. They've put out a lot, and we are usually big fans of a lot of their games. So which ones from Board and Dice would you say are your top games?
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.